Could have had a bad bitch, not committal.
It's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. Today, I've got Ted Siedle from benchmarkalert.com. I can't believe we're playing this song, Ted. This is the song that Mr. Ted has picked. Lizzo, Truth Hurts. My daughter loves this song. I didn't know what you were talking about.
How can you not know?
I'm getting old. You're getting younger. I'm getting old, I guess. I don't know, man.
Evidently. If I know music you don't know, something's wrong.
Something is wrong. I've got the boomers telling me what's hip now, guys. What is going on? So, man, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today for a Kicking It session. I'm very excited. I actually was up. I worked really late at night, and I was up at like 2 or 3 o'clock and in my studio, and I saw your video come on CNBC. You've got a new little segment on CNBC, and I'm like, hey, I've seen that guy before, and I first saw you on, I believe, Chris Martinson, Peak Prosperity, and I really enjoyed what you were saying. Very just wonderful, crazy story. So if my audience, they don't know about you, Ted, could you tell us a little bit about your backstory? You grew up outside of the United States. Your father was murdered. Kind of just give us a little backdrop on that, if you will.
Yeah, I was born in the Caribbean, in Trinidad. My mother was Trinidadian, and my father was white American. And I grew up all over the world, and he disappeared in East Africa, in Uganda, East Africa, in 1971. And it turned out that he had been captured by Idi Amin, the brutal dictator of Uganda. And it also turned out that his work was he was studying care of the elderly in Africa, and teaching about it at the local university. But he was also working with the CIA, and that was something that I didn't know about till after his death. And so at the time he was captured by Amin and disappeared, he was working with the CIA on information about how Idi Amin had captured 300 soldiers in a local garrison town and had brutally murdered them. So I was 17 years old when my father disappeared, and because his body couldn't be found and nobody knew what had happened to him, his life insurance wouldn't pay, his estate couldn't be probated, and I had no place to go, so I went to live with a relative. And over the course, there was an investigation done by the Ugandan government, which determined that Idi Amin had captured and killed him. And then within a year or so, his life insurance would pay, and Social Security paid survivors benefits. So things started freeing up after about a year and a half. But so that was what happened to me at age 17. I was penniless and orphaned, and that actually led me to doing forensic investigative work, which I've continued to do throughout my career for the last 35 years. And
so what happened? You confronted your father's killers, and like, how did that all pan out? Did it bring some closure for you? I think you mentioned that you had a team of lawyers help you with that at that time. How did you even pay for all of that?
Yeah, there was a team of lawyers that helped me. As soon as he disappeared, there was a team of lawyers in Washington that worked with me to bring a lawsuit against the Uganda government and to find out what happened to him. And those lawyers worked on a contingency basis, so
Okay.
we didn't have any money to pay them. So that was within the first year or two that he disappeared. And we were able to get a settlement from the Uganda government, which enabled me to pay for college and then law school after that.
Nice.
But then in 1997, he disappeared in 1971.
Okay.
In 1997, I went back to Uganda with the help of the CIA and the Ugandan military, and went and met the people who had killed my father, and we attempted to find the bodies, and we dug the bodies out in a field. And so the closure that I had really was in 1997, which was what 25 years, 26 years after the fact. And that was really my first forensic investigation. I often tell people that that the investigation of what happened to my father was the first real forensic investigation I did. And since then, I've done over 1 trillion in forensic investigations of pensions and retirement plans.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know, Ted is the biggest whistleblower awardee in history. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So have you've collected 75 million, or actually more than that, because 75 was just kind of the last two biggest cases, correct?
Well, the total was 78 million.
78 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
30 million from the CFTC, the commodities regulators.
Yep. And
then 48 million from the SEC, the securities regulators.
This is crazy. So it's just funny how, I guess, would you say that life kind of, our experiences shape who we are, and that's kind of what happened with you. That whole what was a tragic thing for you at a young age ended up molding you and helping you become the person that you are today. So it's amazing how things kind of work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no way that had my father not been murdered when I was 17, there's no way I would have become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And there's no way that I would be doing the work that I've done for the last 35 years.
Amazing. So let's talk about, I want to first talk about this new book you've got coming out. Tell us a little bit about it. You're doing it with co-authored with Robert Kiyosaki, and you were actually on his podcast, his radio show, maybe last year? Is that when you guys kind of first met, and shortly thereafter came up with this idea to do a book together, or how did this book actually come about?
Well, Robert Kiyosaki is the author of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series of books. He's got I was recently at Barnes and Noble with my daughter, and I looked, and there's an entire shelf of his books there at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
But Robert was giving a seminar in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and taking a group on a cruise for a week or so. So he called me and he said, could I come down to Fort Lauderdale and speak to his group before the cruise started? And I did that in a sort of very informal kind of Oprah Winfrey style, where they just handed me a microphone and said, walk around the audience and talk to people. Okay. And so he was very interested in pensions and had seen the work I had done. Like I said, I've done over 1 trillion in forensic investigations of pensions, including the state of Rhode Island, the state of North Carolina, and cities all over the country. So he found that work very intriguing and said, let's work on a book together.
Nice.
So when Robert Kiyosaki, who sold 35 million books, asks you to work with them on a book, you say yes.
Yeah, he's like a legend in the whole author industry, for sure. So that's awesome, man. I can't wait to read that one. I've read a couple of his books in the past, and it would be interesting to be able to read your side of it as well about the pension thing. That's what I want to talk to you today about. I'm a millennial myself, And my channel is more geared toward millennials, just trying to get them to wake up and see what is going on here. It is a mess. And you when we were on the phone, you brought up a good point about, people say that the baby boomers, got it all good and they're all set up to, take the cake. And you basically said, no, they're not. And, I knew, and in the back of my mind, I always knew that the baby boomers were in trouble. But for some reason, when you said that and kind of connected it with pensions, it just clicked like, yeah, they're not in a good position either. So we've got two spectrums, two sides of the spectrum. The millennials are screwed and the baby boomers. Can you talk us through like this whole pension issue, and is that the actual catalyst for our next financial crisis?
Yeah, well, the thing is that over the past 40 years, the promise that workers could retire with a pension has gradually been eroded. So the baby boomers got hit with this attack on pension benefits, and instead, baby boomers were told, corporations are going to offer you 401ks, and you will do as well in a 401k as you would have done in the pension. We're going to take away your pension, but we're going to replace it with a 401k, and the 401k will provide you with the same financial or retirement security as a pension. Well, that's just not true, and never was true. It never could be true. So the great 401k experiment, which was inflicted on the baby boomers, actually destroyed their retirement security. And now, of course, the millennials are not being offered pensions either. They're being offered 401ks still, even though the experience of the last 40 years has shown that 401ks are a terrible way of providing for your retirement security.
Yeah, they take so many fees from us, and the returns just aren't there. And we can talk a little bit about the Fed and like zero interest rates or near zero interest rates and what that's doing to the whole market. But the whole retirement thing, right, was supposed to be this three-legged stool, right? Your pension, your savings, and Social Security. And we know that Social Security is bankrupt pretty much. It's just it's an IOU. So what are baby boomers going to do?
Well, the baby boomers are really screwed. Your average baby boomer has less than $25,000 saved for retirement. So how are you going to retire on $25,000? That's your average baby boomer. Many baby boomers have nothing saved, or $1,000 saved for retirement. So that means that they have nothing but Social Security when they retire. And your average Social Security benefit is something like $1,500 a month. I think it's a little less. So that's what you're talking about, people retiring on. And it's happening now. The baby boomers, many of them are retired now, but you're not hearing about their pain much.
And why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think a lot of baby boomers are ashamed of the fact that they haven't saved more, and a lot of them are going back to work. Like here in Florida, when I go to the grocery store, Publix, the people bagging my groceries are in their 70s. They're not high school kids. I mean, some are high school kids,
right?
But so they're creeping back into these menial jobs, whether they're Walmart greeters or baggers at supermarkets, but they're not really talking about how much pain they're in, and the idea that baby boomers are enjoying lavish retirement is just simply not true. Less than 1% of baby boomers have enough money saved to provide for their retirement security.
Yeah, I guess again, it's a skewed thing, right? Because where I live, I'm in Michigan, right? So I'm in Oakland County, used to be one of the, more wealthy counties in the country. And all I see up here, man, is Florida plates. The boomers, Florida plates, have got their Benzes, their Bentleys, and they're up and they're up here driving around. I'm like, man, they're taking they're taking all the money. That's but you're right. Like the majority of the people are like my grandmothers and those are the people who are left, holding nothing. And what is this all about? This is a symptom of something, in my opinion, Ted. It's not the cause of this. This is a symptom to see that pensions are underperforming. We have little to no savings. Even if you have savings, you can't yield anything. There's no yield on savings. Social Security is gonna be not even existent by the time I get to my retirement age. What do you think is the cause of all of this?
Well, we've got a huge income disparity problem in this country that's only gotten worse, and the middle class, the upper middle class, even has been attacked.
Yeah.
So the wealth of the lower income people, middle class, and even how much money it takes to live a middle class lifestyle has changed dramatically. Like for me and my family, we have been paying $3,000 a month for health insurance.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a lot of money. That's a mortgage, that's a car payment, whatever. That's a mortgage and a car payment combined. So just to live a middle class lifestyle is costs tremendous amount of money. So to be able to pay $36,000 a year for health insurance, how much money do you have to earn?
Right.
50,000, 100,000,
And then you got the politicians. I know with my mom, she and I would tell her like, this whole Obamacare thing is not a good look. I'm telling you. And then it finally kind of rolls out, and she's not necessarily she wasn't a Republican or anything, but I was always kind of more leaning toward that side of just policy and how things are run from a political standpoint. But she's like, yeah, this is my health insurance has almost doubled since Obamacare has been implemented. I said, I told you, like, there's no free lunch. So, these promises from both sides, for sure, but these promises that the politicians are offering, someone has to pay for this stuff, and I just feel like we're bankrupt as a country.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is that, Social Security will have to survive because for many people, it's all they've got. If Social Security were to truly go bankrupt, you would have millions of people dying in the streets. Because if you're 72, 75 years old and all you've got is a Social Security check, what happens if it goes away? Well, you're going to be homeless, and before you know it, you're going to be sick, and before you know it, you're going to be dead. I mean, so Social Security cannot be allowed to go bankrupt. It can be pared back by pushing the retirement age further and further up, and by possibly cutting benefits. But the benefits are so skinny already, you can't really cut them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's very true. And what are so do you think that I guess I want to ask you somewhat about UBI. Like, do you think universal basic income is going to be a solution that's going to be implemented? It's going to have to be something like that. Do
Well,
you think? I don't think it's
well,
the right solution, but do you think that's going to be proposed or
well.
implemented?
There's certain things that you know, choices that have to be made, and for example, do we get a national healthcare system? You
Mm-hmm.
know, people have to have healthcare. If people don't have healthcare, they die.
Yeah.
They die in the streets, or they show up in an emergency room, which really is healthcare. It's just it's the least cost effective form of healthcare. But
Mm-hmm.
so, it's a big question for this country. Is it even possible to have millions of Americans without health insurance? I don't think it doesn't make any sense whether you're a fiscal conservative or a left wing liberal.
Mm-hmm.
A fiscal conservative knows that the way to keep healthcare costs low is to have a universal healthcare system.
Mm.
And allowing people to get really sick is not fiscally sound. You're basically creating catastrophic illnesses, catastrophic conditions that cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in the last few months or years of a person's life. So, I think on the healthcare issue, there needs to be some kind of intelligent consensus on what are we going to do, and in terms of the basic income, there needs to be some kind of consensus on that.
Mm.
It's hard. It can be hard for some fiscal conservatives to accept that some of these social safety nets are actually fiscally sound.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, and we've got to deal with the cost of healthcare too. I think that's a huge issue. If we can bring the cost down, and I think that has to do with maybe how we're just allowing these insurance companies and these drug companies, more so the drug companies, should just charge whatever they want. I think we get that under control. At least the cost for having some type of universal medical health insurance, program would be less costly.
Yeah,
I mean?
as you mentioned, I've had a lot of success as a corporate securities whistleblower. But before I die, I'd like to have one good medical pharmaceutical whistleblower case under my belt.
Oh, wow.
Because there is so much fraud in our healthcare system that and of course we see it the most here in Florida because we have the highest elderly population.
Okay.
And for some reason, Florida is always the center for scamming, but this is where Madoff ran a lot of his Ponzi scheme.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he was.
Well, he lived in New York, but he raised a lot of his money here in Palm Beach, Florida.
Oh, okay.
But we've got a tremendous amount of medical fraud here. Almost every medical fraud either originates or has some connection with Florida. So
I mean, you look at like insulin prices, insane. These drug companies are just. It makes no sense. It really does. For us to be a so-called first world country, it makes no sense the way these prices are. But I guess we can pivot toward. I really want to dive into this whole your forensics thing, man. That really intrigued me. Like, what's the current state of pensions? I mean, is the last interview I heard from you, I think, was the Chris Martenson interview on Peak Prosperity, and you were talking about like CalPERS, their issue. You've got Illinois, Kentucky. You were talking about Kentucky. Have those pension issues gotten worse since last year? I'm assuming so, but are you keeping track with what's going on there?
Yeah, well, we have across the country about $4 trillion in state and local pensions.
Mm-hmm.
So these are pensions set aside for state and local government workers. And these pensions are being profoundly mismanaged. I call it gross malpractice, generally practice. So I've looked at over $1 trillion of these pensions. There's over $4 trillion in them. But one of the things I see everywhere, whether it's the corporate pensions or the government pensions, state and local pensions, is that the pensions are being grossly mismanaged. Wall Street is looting pensions, and the people running the pensions haven't got a clue of what's really happening. So that's a huge problem that has led to many of the state pensions being, I think over half of them are financially struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And over half of them have cut workers' benefits, retirement benefits in the last 10 years. So that is a very big problem.
They've got to see the issue though, right, Ted? I mean, don't they have these like actuary tables or whatever, and they have to hit those numbers every year as far as performance? And
they do, but the actuaries are hired by the pensions to say the things the pensions want them to say. Yeah. So like you have in Detroit.
Man, yeah, I was going to touch on that. Yeah.
In Detroit, the actuaries said the pensions were funded reasonably well. And then when the bankruptcy hit, the actuary that I think the receiver or hired, or a new actuary was hired who
Mm-hmm.
concluded that the pensions were far worse off than the previous actuary.
Mm.
So some cities and states get actuaries to pump up their funding levels,
Mm-hmm.
make them sound and look better funded. And then sometimes when they're negotiating benefit cuts, they hire actuaries to make the pension look worse.
Okay.
So one of the chapters in the book that Robert and I have written, Who Stole My Pension, is called, one of the chapters is your pension is lying about how well funded it is. And pensions can lie either way. If they want a bailout from the federal government, they can hire an actuary who says that they're in deep trouble. If they want a bailout from the state, or they want to cut benefits, they can, make things look worse. If they want to convince workers they're well run, they can hire actuaries to make them look better funded than they really are. So that's one of the chapters in the book. Is called Your Pension is Lying About How Well Funded It Is. Another chapter is Your Pension is Lying About Its Investment Performance. Another one is that your pension is lying about the fees it pays. Another chapter is your pension is lying about the risks it takes. And these are observations that I found across the nation in the trillion of investigations I've done. I've never seen a pension fund admit to the public that its performance sucks. They're all good. Every pension says, we're up 3%. Yeah, you're up 3%, but the market was up 10. But this
Right.
So you'll never find a pension admitting that their performance is terrible. Every pension in the country lies about how much it pays Wall Street in fees. In Rhode Island, I went up there and I said, the pension is disclosing $10 million in fees. That's a lie. Within 6 months, the pension changed its disclosure to read $80 million.
Oh my God.
So they went 8 times greater. The real fees were 8 times greater than the fees they were disclosing. And the pensions lie about the risks they take. They claim that hedge funds are investing in crazy, risky investments like hedge funds, and claim that they're a way of reducing risk. Well, hedge funds don't reduce risk.
No, not at all, especially in this environment.
On a fire.
Yeah, like again, it's so many moving parts. But one thing about the hedge fund thing is like the Federal Reserve with their near interest, zero interest rate policy, they're essentially driving everyone into index. Like, the index funds are outperforming the hedge funds. So,
absolutely.
But you've got the pensions; they're putting their money with the hedge funds.
Well, this is one of the things. That's another chapter in the book. It's called "Your Pension Thinks It's." Pensions think they're smarter than Warren Buffett. They're not. So Warren Buffett tells pensions. Warren Buffett has told pensions across the country, do not invest in hedge funds. He even made $1 million bet that hedge funds would underperform the S&P 500 index. He's told pension funds to invest in the S&P 500 index. So what have the pension funds across the nation done? Invested in hedge funds and ignored Warren Buffett. They think they're smarter than Warren Buffett, and they're not.
Wow. So I'm sure you're doing some investigating on pensions or whatnot. I'm sure you can't talk about what you're doing now, but do you see in the next six to 12 months, do you see one of these states needing some type of bailout?
Well, I think they need a bailout. Kentucky, Illinois, these states need a bailout. I don't know what's going on right now with Puerto Rico. That was a pension fund that essentially failed, went bankrupt. Actually, the first American pension fund to attempt to go bankrupt was like 8 years ago. It was Saipan, which is in Guam. There is an American government pension fund for the work. It's a territory. So
right.
It was and that was an attempt to go bankrupt like 10 years ago. So Kentucky and these other states need a federal bailout. There will have to be a federal bailout.
What about CalPERS, California? That's the biggest pension, correct? Or is it Texas?
California is the biggest pension, but California has got a lot of money in it.
Okay.
It is colossally mismanaged. I actually wrote to the CalPERS board like 5 years ago, telling them I was aware of problems in their portfolio, and they said they weren't interested in hearing about it. They had no interest in meeting with me to hear what my expert opinions were. So CalPERS is the largest pension in the country. It's in a state that enjoys healthy population growth, like here in Florida, but it is terribly mismanaged. But it's not on a critical list. The critical lists are the states like Kentucky and Illinois, Connecticut. There are many you can find if you search the internet. Your listeners can check the top 10 worst funded pensions in the country, the top 10 best, and there's a rating. Every state pension fund is rated by somebody in terms of how well funded it is.
So what is your prediction on which one, or you don't have to give us which one, but in the next 6 to 12 months, do you see one like failing, or is it even worse than that, sooner than that?
Well, Kentucky is a mess, and there's been a new governor elected there, but Kentucky, I would say, is the one that is most urgent right now.
Okay.
Illinois has done an incredible job of ignoring the problem. I mean, everybody in the state's talking about it, has been talking about it for the last 10 years. But there's absolutely no interest in really rolling up your sleeves and figuring out what went wrong and how to fix it. Most of the time when you see around the nation pension reform or pension fixes, there has been no forensic investigation done to determine what went wrong. My personal mantra is every dead pension deserves an autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't fix a pension without knowing what went wrong, because if you simply put more money into a leaking bucket, to a mismanaged pension, it's going to squander that money as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I encourage people to, if you're work for a corporation and your pension has failed, if you work for a state or a county and your pension is failing and you're being asked to take a cut in benefits or lose all your benefits, you should demand a forensic investigation to explain to you what happened. How did this thing go so horribly wrong?
Interesting. Yeah, that's
and forensic investigations almost never happen. I met with the federal government, the PBGC, 10 years ago. The government had taken over 4,500 failed pensions at that time, and not once had a forensic investigation been done. Even though the law requires an investigation, they had never done it once. So if you find yourself in a situation where your pension is being taken from you, either entirely or in part, you should organize and demand a forensic investigation, because any so-called fix to the problem without understanding what the problem is doomed to fail.
So yeah, so this is that's interesting, and I totally agree. So basically, we've just got Wall Street just robbing us blind. They're robbing us on the pension side. They're robbing us on the 401k side. They're even robbing us on the savings side because they're in bed with the Fed to get them to keep interest rates low so that they can borrow in corporate debt. They can borrow money and buy their own stock. Like, it's just crazy. I don't understand why more people aren't upset. Like,
it's insane that that pensions are paying up to 6-7% a year to be in hedge funds, when it is well known, well established. Warren Buffett and Jack Bogle and others have said it repeatedly, that index funds that charge 1 basis point, 1/100th%, far outperform hedge funds that charge 6 or even 9% a year. So given how well known it is, how is it that a quarter of our state and local pension assets are in hedge funds and other what are called high risk, high cost alternative investments?
They've got to be being bought. They have to be bought.
It's what we call politicization of the investment process. Okay. Investment decisions aren't being made on the merits. They're being made due to political concerns. Who's giving to whose political campaign? And now with Citizens United, Wall Street guys can give into dark pools of money, and so nobody knows who's giving what.
Now, what's Citizens United? I'm not familiar with that.
That was the Supreme Court case that ruled that that donations to political candidates could be essentially unlimited. And so that's changed the political landscape dramatically. But we know across the country that pension funds that say by analogy, a pension fund that could be paying a penny for a paperclip is paying $1 for a broken paperclip. Why? It's so obvious that what is being done is wrong, and the results are profound. The damage is profound, but it's happening all over the country. Hedge funds are paying fees hundreds of times greater than they need to for underperforming investments. One of the tenets of my work is that where you have corruption of the investment process or kickbacks, let's say, the damage is always far more than the kickback.
Yeah.
So if I pay a crooked politician $1 million to hire me to manage 100 million, and then I do a shitty job, I lose 10 million, what's the damage? The $1 million kickback or the 10 million I've lost?
Right.
So when you have corruption of the investment decision-making process, the damage is always much greater than the kickback.
Wow, that's interesting. And so this whole ERISA topic, as far as them being regulated, so pensions don't have to be or aren't regulated. Is that correct?
Pensions,
there's no oversight?
State and local pensions in the United States are not subject to the federal law known as ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. They're exempt from ERISA. So the only regulation they have is state and local regulations, which I call it's a thin patchwork quilt of state and local regulations. And most of the issues that a local pension would have are not addressed in any law anywhere. So can the city of Detroit pensions invest in derivatives? There's probably no law in Detroit that answers that question. There's no comprehensive federal law governing these pensions, and there's no comprehensive state law, only a patchwork quilt of, of state regulations that is not comprehensive at all.
So in the case with here up in my city, Detroit, what happens when they do like a restructuring as they did here? Things get written down, and what happens now? I'm sure they're still not performing the way they should be with the pensions. So how does that, like, what happens now with, like, in the case with Detroit?
Well, again, if there was no autopsy done of the dead or dying pension, there was a pension reform package pushed through without any forensic investigation into what went wrong. So whenever you have reform without an investigation, the reform will fail. So
gotcha.
The Detroit pensions, I can assure you, are still being grossly mismanaged, gross malpractice, generally practiced, and money is being squandered, lost. So whether workers will receive their benefits they've been promised over the next few years depends on if enough additional money was put in such that all the money that's being wasted doesn't really matter. But unless there's been a surplus of money put in, benefits will have to be cut again in the future because the money that was put in is not being properly invested. Wow.
So what should pensioners do? And also, what should people like my generation, millennials, how should we prepare for what is not going to be there for us?
Well, what pensioners have to do is they have to watch their pensions like hawks. They cannot sit back and assume that any promises that were made to them will actually be fulfilled. So sitting back and trusting that everything you've been promised is coming to you is not an option. That's far too risky to do. You've got to watch your pension closely. Read the book, Who Stole My Pension, where I give people the things they need to watch for. So it is critical that they watch their pension, because the people who are supposed to be watching it are not doing a good job. And younger workers, one of the key things for younger workers is to not accept the idea that 401ks are or will ever be a viable retirement strategy. 401ks can be improved by cutting fees, by prohibiting certain unethical practices that are currently allowed in 401ks. But as they stand today, 401ks are not a effective retirement savings vehicle. So despite anything you may hear from Wall Street or employers that this plan is going to work for you, chances are it won't unless you proactively get involved.
Yeah, a buddy of mine and I, we were actually we were founding a company that was looking to tackle that. We're both millennials, and we just ran into so much red tape and just trying to drive the cost down for individuals to kind of have and manage their own 401ks, because you can do that through like a simple 401k. There are different options for sole proprietors, that, easier, less expensive way, but the cost is just, they have it structured in a way where it's just, they basically make you kind of pile into the system that they have set up for you already.
Yeah,
where they siphon off all your money.
Yeah, they basically push you into high-cost retail investment funds.
Yeah.
But the other thing, millennials need to really understand that Wall Street is not your friend.
Right.
Wall Street, the solution to every problem you have, according to Wall Street, is to pay them more money.
Mm-hmm.
So if your pension is underperforming, the solution is pay us more money. If your 401k is underperforming, we'll add analytics and we'll add other products at additional costs that will make it perform better. But then, of course, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you should understand very early on is Wall Street is not your friend, and be suspicious of any sales pitches or you hear.
Yeah. Well, definitely appreciate you coming on, Ted, and we'll have to have you come back on after the book comes out. It's be available, it looks like, on January 14th, this coming new year. Guys can get it probably on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes, we're still working on the January 14th launch date, and
I'm gonna definitely get this for my parents for sure. And
if you're part of a group like IBM workers or Amazon workers, it's something that if the people in your pension or 401k read this book and all agree it makes sense, and then go to the company and say, we need to focus on these issues, you can change your retirement plan. You can improve it.
Mm-hmm.
They're very concrete ideas in the book. And so I'd encourage you all, if you're a part of a retirement plan, a pension, a 401k, get the other people in your plan to read the book and hopefully agree on what needs to be done, because you can then mobilize and talk to your employer about making those changes.
Yeah, so guys, at your corporate Christmas party this year, where you have to put on your fake face and smile and laugh, you should hand them this book. Well, It won't be out yet, but Give them an IOU or something, a gift card to get this book, because it's necessary. It definitely is necessary.
Yeah, and the core things of the book are that if you want to improve pensions, you've got to improve transparency. You should have full transparency.
Yeah.
You should lower costs, like going into index funds, lower your costs. You should, and by doing that, you will avoid risky investments like hedge funds and other alternative investments. So these are some of that you should avoid conflicts of interest, and which we talk a lot about in the book. So there's very concrete things there that can be done.
Yeah, if the Fed is going to continue with this direction, which I can't see them going any other course but lower interest rates towards zero, it's going to force is actually going to force everyone into index funds. Like, index funds are going to outperform hedge funds. Is just going to continue to be that direction. So I don't think hedge funds are the way to go. You can't beat the market when in this type of environment.
Yeah. So the four things we say in the book that you need to do are, let me say them again because I didn't complete the list. It's insist on full transparency. So you would tell your employer, that the pension has to be, or the retirement plan has to be fully transparent, has to be low cost. All the investments have to be liquid, means you can sell them at any time. And the fourth thing is the investments have to be readily ascertainable market values. So you want to get away from investments that who knows what they're worth and whose values may be inflated. And that's what these hedge fund guys, a lot of these alternative investment guys do. They claim things are worth more. They claim hard to value assets are actually worth more than they are. So if you follow those four things, transparency, lower cost, liquidity, and I've forgotten the fourth one.
Market value.
And readily ascertainable market value, then you potentially vastly improve your pension or your 401k plan.
Nice. Well, again, Ted Siedle, I appreciate you coming on today. We'll definitely have to have him back on, guys. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe below, and check out his website. We've got Benchmark Alert, but he's also got one called Siedle Law Whistleblower. It's Siedle Whistleblower Forensics.com. You guys can check that site out if you need to hire Mr. Siedle for your needs. I'm pretty sure he's pricey now. But hey, he may be able to help your company or your state. So,
well, for the price of the book, you can get 90% of my advice. So
there you go.
$18.99, or I believe the price is, or something like that.
Yeah, I think I saw it. Yeah, $18.95. So
$18.95. You can get most of what you need to know about my insights. Again,
guys, check him out, Ted Siedle. He's, again, the whistleblower that has been awarded the most money ever in history, which is insane. We'll have to talk more about like laws and things like that are trying to change that. And the next time you come on, I've heard about this. They're trying to change the laws where whistleblowers won't be able to make any money. So we'll have to talk about that, Ted, next time.
Absolutely. My position is if you can make $1 billion ripping people off, you should be able to make $1 billion keeping people from being ripped off. I
agree. It's your boy Crypto Blood. I'm going to rock out to this Lizzo. I can't believe this is something Ted requested.
You got to get with it.
I got to get. We're out of here, people. Holla.